Good morning, everyone. So the news of the hour, it's come out in the last couple of, literally the last couple of hours. I think this was from a briefing yesterday. The UK Defence Minister says he wants to send British boots to Ukraine in 2026. That's not me making it up. This is mainstream media now. Let me share this with you guys real quick, and then we'll just get onto it. So, I forgot to share the screens. So this is the news here, guys, okay? I want to send British soldiers to Ukraine. Defense Secretary confirms. Where is it? And he says, here we are. The Defense Secretary, writing in the Telegraph, says that he insisted that 2026 must be the year the war finally ends, and therefore boots on the ground. So I'm going to lead with this article today, guys. Now, there's a multi-pronged, there's probably more than multi-prongs. There's like three things that are happening now. There's the conflict in the Middle East. The United States are building up troops in that region. It does look like on this channel we're saying it could go. The first airstrikes could be on the 28th of March, or after the 28th of February, or after the 3rd of March. Either way, that's happening, right? So you've got that one, you've got that one region that's about to pop. You've then got the war in Ukraine, which inevitably is going to drag British boots on the ground in Ukraine in some role. You've then got the added tensions on our streets. Now, last night on the live stream, I was showing you guys, these things are boiling over into violence. People are starting to wave Templar crosses. You're having, racial groups fighting among each other. And what this does is it just makes things worse, right? It just makes things worse because you get propaganda from both sides, fanning the flame. Now, all these things are connected. They're all connected. Once those missile strikes start going into Iran, first of all, you've not heard a peep from the, liberal media in the United Kingdom condemning the crackdown of the Iranian regime and potentially taking 30,000 people into beams of light. You've not heard one peep out of the liberal media condemning that mass loss of people, right? When the US airstrikes go in, watch the juxtaposition of that. Watch the difference in liberal media being pushed out, saying, oh, look how terrible the Americans are. Look how terrible they are. And ultimately, where's the first offense here? Look, and it's not going to matter if you live in the United Kingdom, because what's going to happen, as soon as those missiles go into Iran, the likelihood of sleeper cells activated in the United Kingdom explodes, right? It explodes. Now, we've also got this this conflict in Ukraine, and from this article that I'm going to get to in a minute. From this article, the British Defence Secretary confirms that he wants to have boots on the ground in 2026. That's what he's saying. It's not me making it up, guys. This is not my speculation, analysis, and opinion. This is from the horse's mouth. And I'm not referring to John Healy as a horse. I'm just saying the expression from the horse's mouth. Now, when the riots broke out, not last year but the year before, 24, dubbed the Southport riots, the military was this close to being called in. All right, it really was, guys. The military was so close to being called in, to the context that they'd been issued riot shields, helmets, and batons. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, all that kit and equipment, it's centralized. I don't know where it's centralized. There's places in Salisbury. There's places it's probably in Salisbury, actually. All this kit and equipment, the riot shields, the batons, the helmets, the public order stuff for the military, it's all kept in a centralized location because it's not specific to unit, right? So back in the when the Southport riots were there, that kit had been issued. It had been sent out. It had not been individually issued, but it had been issued to units. What I mean by that is, so they said, right, okay, well, there's a likelihood here that we may have to put boots on the ground here, British soldiers, to reinforce the police. So they sent that in containers to those barracks. Now, that didn't get issued on an individual level, or maybe it did. I don't know. But from the people I've spoke to, they said it just turned up in big, you know those big steel shipping containers, right? Turned up on barracks. What's that? Don't worry about that. Because it's there, then it's a lot easier. So we were that close last 24 to deploying soldiers to support the police in public order. Now, if we've got a deployment to Ukraine, guess what? 7,500 people deployed to Ukraine. That turns to 55,000 very quickly. We don't have enough soldiers, right? So you would have the soldiers in Ukraine. You would then have logistic support in Poland, logistic support in in the Baltic nations. This would be a huge deployment. So if you consider, and I'm just giving you the numbers, guys. I'm giving you guys the numbers, and I'm telling you what's coming. And like, they'll be in the United Kingdom. We will be you will be in a country where bad things will be happening to you, and nobody's coming. And that's kind of terrifying. It is, guys. That's kind of terrifying. So just let's think about the numbers, right? We know the British military have 19,000 infantry, and guess what? The infantry are the ones that are trained with the riot shields. You know, they're the ones that are trained with the batons and the shields and the rear front. You can't send chefs, right? You can't send clerks. You can't send non-infantry on those roles because they're not trained. They don't have the experience. They don't have the command structure set up. So if all our infantry, right, are in Ukraine, enforcing a lasting, and enforcing a just and lasting peace, and there is civil conflict on our streets, who's going to come, guys? Who is going to come and save you? Absolutely no fucker. And do you think, and here's the question, here's the kicker, guys, here's the quick, or as they say on YouTube, here's where it gets interesting. If you were a bad guy, right, and you're planning these attacks, would you be sat there saying, right, let's do it now while all the soldiers are here, or would you wait till those soldiers are gone? Like, if you were planning an attack on a country, would you do it when all their soldiers were there, or would you wait till half of them have gone? What do you think, guys? What do you think? Divide and conquer? What would you do? Would you let that country divide itself? We're in for a swizzle, guys. I don't know whether it's going to come this year or next year. And look, as a backdrop to this, it just turns out aliens are real now as well. But I'm not going to touch that. I'm going to come on later on. I'm going to do another alien update because that thing is moving crazily forwards. Right. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, if you're joining for the first time, we are talking about the British Defence Secretary now confirming he wants British boots on the ground in Ukraine in 2026. That's what he's confirming. That's what he's saying. It's official. It's not me speculating. That's what he's saying. Now, I'm going to read this article from GB News. But before we do that, and you're on, if you've not done so already, can you make sure you please hit those buttons down below, the like, comment, subscribe, bell notification? Because guess what? Really helps me out when you guys do that. It does absolutely massively. Right. So I'm gonna lead with this article here from GB News. Then I'm gonna give real-time commentary. Okay. So John Healey, the UK Defence Minister, has declared his ambition to become the first Defence Minister to deploy British soldiers to Ukraine. What do you think that means? What do you think that means, guys? What do you think that means? With the 4th anniversary of Russia's invasion just days away, Mr. Healey said, I want to be the first defence minister who deploys British troops to Ukraine because this will mean that this war is finally over. All right. So first of all, what you've got to look at this in context, right? The Russians have been quite clear and the Russians are winning. The Russians are taking ground each and every day. I'll come onto the map in a second. The Russians have said absolutely no. Absolutely no, that ain't happening. That's not going to happen. We're not playing with that. We're not letting, we're not allowing British boots on the ground in Ukraine. Now, yesterday I shared a video. Did I share a video? I may have shared a video yesterday. I don't know. I certainly shared the article. where Boris Johnson is saying that, and look, guys, and Boris Johnson's fair. He's got a fair argument. Boris Johnson is saying, right, who's really in charge of Ukraine? Is it the Ukrainians or is it the Russians? Because if the Ukrainians are asking for British boots on the ground in Ukraine, then why has that got anything to do with the Russians? And he's absolutely right. And the reason I'm bringing these things to your forefront is because these things are going to happen. There's going to be no soldiers left. The police are going to be overrun. And you're going to phone 999 because someone's kicking your door in, and they're going to say, oh, I'm sorry. Can you send an email? The UK Defence Secretary, in writing in the Telegraph, insisted that 2026 must be the year the war finally ends. There is, there is no heavier burden on any defence secretary or any government than committing our armed forces on operations, he said. And he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right on that. Now, the problem here, like any conflict, you need to, any conflict, guys, whether this is a personal conflict, whether this is a commercial conflict, or whether this is an international conflict. Conflicts, when you're in a conflict, you need to take decisive action early. Literally, makes no sense in waiting and then dipping your toe in. It doesn't work like that. A good example of this, like a perfect example of this, actually, would be, would be the Falklands War, right? The Falklands was invaded. The Royal Marines surrendered. They did, guys. The Royal Marines did, look, you guys have all seen the Royal Marines training. They do lots of pull-ups, lots of upper body strength, the Royal Marines. Now, the reason they do a lot of upper body strength is because they don't want to be in a situation that they can't surrender. If your arms are fatigued and they want to be able to get their arms up real quick and surrender. That's why they do the upper body strength. You see, pull-ups have a lot of that similar, that body motion where they can put their arms up. So, you can imagine it now. You're a Royal Marine, right? And you're posing for a picture with a child in your arm. You're looking all cool with your berry on and that, and somebody fires around somewhere. You drop the child and surrender real quick. That's why they do all the upper body strength. Anyway, sorry, 1980, whenever it was, what was it? 82, I think it was 1982. 1982, when the Argentinians invaded the Falkland Islands, it took 3 days. Margaret Thatcher, she said, right, lads, go down there. The Marines have surrendered that island. And they did, guys. The Royal Marines surrendered. Go down there, get that island back because the Marines have surrendered. So, the airborne forces had to go down and deal with that. Anyway, that was decisive action early on, and they took the islands back. Here in the United Kingdom, we don't have that. We literally have tippy-toey. And the problem is, the only problem I think that nobody wants to take decisive action is because people don't want to lose their jobs, right? If you take decisive action and you're wrong in politics, that's over for you. It's over, it's kind of like security, you don't see the need for security when you've got good security, right? So you cut security. Like, for example, if you're not having terrorists and things blowing up, then you will think, oh, we don't need security. But then when you cut security, that thing happens. You're like, oh yeah, we kind of do need that now. But by then it's too late. So security is an easy thing to cut, and it's an easy thing to push to one side. Governments do it all the time. They do it all the time and just pray that in their 4-year tenure, they're not going to have a big cock up. Now, if you make a decisive action and you're a politician and you make that decisive action early and it's wrong, it's over for you. So politicians do not want to make decisive actions. Why? Because they want to keep hold of their jobs. And unfortunately, that's the scandadly situation that we're in. So what he's saying is John Healey. He's saying there's no heavier burden on any defence secretary or any government than committing our forces on an operational role, he said. Boris Johnson, meanwhile, as I said earlier, and his argument solid, has urged the UK and its allies to deploy non-combat troops to Ukraine. Remember, there's no such thing as non-combat troops, guys. It's ridiculous. The former Prime Minister told the BBC there's no logical reason why non-fighting forces should not be in Ukraine. First of all, he's wrong. There's no such thing as non-combative troops. It's just absurd. But his argument is solid. His argument is, Boris Johnson's argument is solid. He went on to describe the failure to act decisively after Russia annexed Crimea in 2014 as tragic, and it was. Britain and France have overseen months of talks with allies on forming a coalition of the willing to deploy peacekeeping forces once a deal ends the war. So first of all, right, there's not going to be a deal, right? That's just, I think people need to, let me show you this picture they've shared. Sorry, guys. Let me show you this picture they've shared. Hang on, where is it? Right, I'm going to share you with this picture they've shared on GB News. So that's the picture they've got on GB News of Keir Starmer and John Healey. Shall we deploy British soldiers? Yes. It's probably the worst picture they could have showed of them. But listen, whatever. Right, let me come on to the chat, guys, because we've got that happening, and we've also got the prospect. Look, all these things are intertwined. They're all interconnected. They're all happening at the same time. Sean Pearsons is saying, I'm sure I've just got dripped on. I hope I've not got another lead. Sean Pearsons is saying, can't understand how he didn't say he's just been dripped on. Can't understand how Starmer hasn't ordered the sausage to be released on the front line to help the Ukrainian rent boys out. Yeah. Release the sausages. That's obviously a reference to when Keir Starmer, now, let me get that back up, actually. Right, okay. So, listen, I know we're going down a little bit of a side quest here. So, can you guys remember when Keir Starmer said, release the sausages? Can you guys remember that? And it was a gaffe, and everybody was like, oh, God, what's he talking about? You said, guys, honestly, I've said dumb things at, doing presentations. I've said the wrong word, and it happens. It really does. It happens. It just comes out, and you don't know why. Equally, remember when Keir Starmer said release the sausages, yeah? And then a couple of excuse me, and then a couple of months later, turned out, the rumors about Keir Starmer and the Ukrainian boy models. It gives it a whole new context, doesn't it? Literally gives that whole fiasco a brand new context, right? User something is saying the only reason the UK won the Falklands was by blocking the sale of Exocet missiles to Argentina. No, there was okay. So first of all, Britain didn't block the sale of Exocet missiles to Argentina. Britain didn't block that all. Britain bought them all. So Britain said to France. Britain said to the French, I can't remember what company that makes the Exocets. I can't remember what company made the Exocets. Basically, Britain said to France, right, stop giving the Argentinians those Exocet missiles. And the French president said, no, we can't. That's a private company. We can't stop that. So Britain said, right, okay, fair enough. We will buy them all. So Britain bought them all. Britain outspent them and said, right, tell you what, you can't stop sending them. We're gonna buy them all. So Britain bought all the Exocet missiles off France. Now, the French were still firing those Exocet missiles at British ships. So what Margaret Thatcher did, and this is in her book, she threatened nuclear Armageddon on the Argentinians. She phoned the French president, allegedly, guys. This is you guys can find this in the media, right? This is why Margaret Thatcher was rock and roll, right? She phoned the French president up and she said, right, listen, give me the self-destruct codes for those Exocet missiles or I'm dropping a nuke. And he said, what? He said, what do you mean, Margaret? And she said, listen, We ain't losing this war. We've got nukes down there. If you want to see Buenos Aires with a mushroom cloud over it, that's on you. But we ain't losing this war. So the French president said, "Okay, I will give you self-destruct frequencies." Now, those self-destruct frequencies are a safety mechanism on those missiles in case it gets launched to the wrong thing. Now, incidentally, this is why the whole development of weapons is so critical, right? The same company that make the Exocet missiles are the same company that make the Storm Shadow missile or the Scalp missile in France. Now, these missiles have been developed over many, many years, and they've got an evolution. They've got an evolution in that heritage, right? They've got a heritage and pedigree. So now the French understand, and this is one of the reasons why, that if you have a self-destruct frequency or signal that you can send those missiles, it's not a good thing because the bad guys can get that, right? So the Storm Shadow, the Scalp missile, which are British and French, is the same thing. They do not have you can't call them off, basically. You program them on the ground, and then there is no way for the pilot or anyone after that missile is launched to alter the code, where that's going. And this is one of the reasons why. Anyway, let's get back on. James Brooke is saying the reason they haven't done it already is Russia will strike the UK. So, yeah, I will come on to that afterwards. In fact, I'll come on to that now. Right, so good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, everyone. Hang on a minute. Right, Debbie Doobs is saying, I love a big fat sausage. And I hope she's meaning, I hope you're meaning like the ones you put in like under the grill or in the pan or something, or or put in omelets. Britain once won a battle using fake inflatable tanks. Right, listen, ladies and gentlemen, if you're joining for the first time, we are talking about the breaking news, literally, of like the last couple of hours. The UK Defence Secretary, let me share this with you. I think this is a fantastic picture. The UK Defence Secretary, there he is, look. Is saying, I want to put British boots on the ground in Ukraine. That's what he's saying. I want to send British soldiers to Ukraine. Defense Secretary confirms, and he wants to do that in 2026. Now, what we've been talking about on this channel is what's going to come after that. So, first of all, there's like three things happening. You've got the conflict in the Middle East that's going to happen. When that happens, obviously, that's going to raise the profile of sleeper cells being activated in the United Kingdom, Iranian-backed sleeper cells. But remember, who's allied with Iran? You've got the Iranians and the Russians and the Chinese. They're all allied. They're all mates. They're all, they're all. I don't think Iran's in BRICS, is it? Maybe it is. I don't know. But they're all allied. So an Iranian-backed sleeper cell is synonymous with a Russian-backed sleeper cell. And I would say these guys are going to be operating together, right? I would say they're going to be sharing sleeper cells and infiltration. So now Russian influence, Iranian influence is the same thing, right? So once the missiles start to go into Iran, that's going to raise the profile, right? Once boots are on the ground in Ukraine, that's going to raise the profile even more, because the bad guys in this country, they know that there's not enough people to come and save them, right? So you're going to see you will see an uptick in sabotage, electricity, water, gas. Very easy to sabotage, guys. Very easy to sabotage. Now, they're easy to sabotage and they're virtually impossible to secure. I think we did the Raven maths, and you would need I think we did the Raven maths, right? And you would need 6 million people to secure the substations in the United Kingdom. I think that's right. You would need 6 million people, and it's just not, that's not a feasible number, right? It's not feasible to do that. You're not going to be able to do that. So if you think about it, right? We are heading to times we've never been there before, because normally, right, I'm not going to go and set fire to, I mean, I don't know why anybody would do it anyway, but like normal people who pay electricity bills, they're not going to go and sabotage their own substation, right? Because first of all, they're going to be out without electricity and all the food's going to go off in their freezers, right? That's going to happen. Yeah, that is absolutely going to happen. Also, the electricity bill is going to go up and they might get sent to jail, right? They might get sent to jail. Now, so if you don't have food in a freezer and somebody else cooks your meals, you know, kind of not bothered about the electricity going off, right? Oh, yeah. And you know what? If the food, listen, and I'm just putting this out there, I don't know if this is the case, but I would speculate, right, that these hotels are contracted to provide 3 meals a day to these migrants, right? And let's just say that if for whatever reason, the fridges go down and they have to go by health and safety rules, don't they? I would say they have to give those migrants some cash. That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say, right, okay, under these circumstances, our insurance says if the electricity goes off and the freezers go down for whatever time, that means the food, we're not able to provide food as per Health and Safety 1974 Cold Food at Work Act or whatever it is. I'm making that up. So therefore, we have to pay the hotel migrants to go and find their own food, right? I don't know if that's a thing, but I would speculate it is, right? I would speculate that absolutely is. So now you're seeing this situation where actually, if you're a migrant in a hotel and you're wanting to earn a bit of extra cash, you're getting double bubble, right? Because if you go and burn a substation down, you get paid from the bad guys, you know, the potential Russian or Iranian, you know, handlers who are doing that. And they, you know, let's be clear, guys, these guys are not going to know that it's a Russian or Iranian handler. You're going to get paid by the hotel. They're going to give you a bit of extra cash because, you know, the electricity is gone and the freezers don't work, so they can't provide you food. You don't pay for your electricity anyway, so it's not going to put your bill up. Worst case that can happen to you is prison, and prison is probably better than the country you came from. So why wouldn't you do that? You know, literally, why, if you were a hotel migrant now and you just didn't care and you was a bad person, and listen, guys, I think everybody clearly everybody that's coming to the United Kingdom, they're all fleeing war and they're all peaceful, right? But maybe there's just one. Maybe there's just one bad person in those hotels and he sat there, or she sat there in that hotel, and maybe that one person, maybe that the whole, like, what was it, 71,000? Maybe there's just one person. Maybe we've caught him already, or her. And they're sat there and they're thinking, right, should I go and set fire to a substation for £1,000? It's a very attractive offer, right? And that's, you know, that's literally how sabotage is going to be, conducted now. We've all seen James Bond, right? What's the movie? I don't know. I kind of like, listen, I love the James Bond movies. I think, like, Roger Moore's got a special place in my heart. He has. Like, Roger Moore's James Bond. Like, we all think that Daniel Craig did the most movies. He didn't. Like, Daniel Craig did 5. Roger Moore banged 7 out. Where was I going with that? Yeah, we've all seen the James Bond movies, right? Roger Moore sneaking in with his little eyebrow, doing his little chops, you know. He's got a little gadget in his watch and he's snuck into the party, and then he goes into the room and he rappels down from a piece of rope he's got hidden in his tuxedo. If you guys have seen some of these MI6 guys, that, you know, they're not rappelling anywhere without some really heavy duty rope. When I was working for the embassy, actually, in Baghdad, we had to go and pick up some guys from MI6, and that Casino Royale had just come out, and we all went to pick them up, and was like, oh god, there's going to be a load of Daniel Craigs come out with, like, you know, Hawaiian shirts and aviators. They just look like office nerds. They literally just look like office nerds. And I was so disappointed. Guys. Anyway, sorry. I digress. So we've all seen these, you know, these movies where the spy rappels down on, you know, in his tuxedo with his little rope, comes into the building and then he's got like the microfilm and he puts the USB disc in and he transfers the files. That's not how it rolls anymore, guys. Literally, now you've got people recruited in hotels, and we've seen this network exposed in the United Kingdom for subsequent operations. All hell's going to break loose in the United Kingdom, guys. It's all going to happen at once. I promise you, this will all happen at once. Right, I'm totally digressing there. I'm totally digressing and going on a side quest. Lewis is saying, Debbie do, one way or another, only guns in front and guns in back, unfortunately. The Russians have no choice in either direction. I don't know. Right, what are we talking about there? Right, I don't know what you were talking about there. Stephen Dever is saying, we have a traditional greeting in Australia called the Bunnings Sausage Sizzle. I want to know what the Bunnings Sausage Sizzle is, guys. What's the Bunnings Sausage Sizzle? Listen, tonight I was going to do some tomahawks on the barbecue tonight, right? But I've been watching these, like, I've never done it. I've been watching these shorts where they cut the you know, the bone. They cut the bone off and then they split the bone down the middle and they barbecue the bone and they spread the bone marrow. I wanted to do that, but the girls are like, no, Daddy, no, we can't eat bone marrow. It's disgusting. So I think I might do it and give it them and just not tell them. Christian the Defender is saying, question everything. And Debbie Doobs is saying, if they can do this, go their own, what will they be doing to the enemy? Right, what are we talking about here, guys? I think I'm missing something in the chat. Am I missing something in the chat? Right, guys. I'm just going to jump to the bottom. There's loads of comments on the chat, and I may be missing them. Right. Nymphodoria is saying, so what does our boots add to the situation, Sean? Okay, so thank you, Nymphodora. Thank you, Nymphodora. So in response to your question, and let's get back on track because we are talking today about the breaking news that's come out in the last couple of hours. The British Defence Secretary John Healey has said he wants to put British boots on the ground, and he wants to do that this year. This is the article I've been going from. First of all, this is a big deterrence then, because the Russians will understand that they don't want to fire at NATO troops, because firing at NATO troops, some people might say it could invoke Article 5. Now, from the Russian side, from the Russian point of view, they don't really care about NATO's little bits of paper because they've got more tanks, they've got more guns, and they're pushing forwards. So the Russians have been quite clear: no British boots on the ground, no NATO boots on the ground. We're not going to allow that. Now, contrast that with what Boris Johnson said yesterday. And look, guys, what Boris Johnson said is absolutely, the logic is solid. What Boris Johnson is saying is, if Ukraine is a sovereign country and they make their own laws, why are we waiting for Russia to say, for the Russians to say, yes, we can have British boots on the ground? It makes no sense. And he's absolutely right. What will it change in the grand scheme of things? Well, you have something called, first of all, you have something called mission creep, and mission creep will be inevitable. But what they will be able to do overtly is training, okay? First of all, it will be medical training, then it will be tactical medical training, and then they'll just get rid of the medical stuff, right? So, first of all, tactical medical training, right? How do you stop becoming a casualty? Right? What's the best way to deal with a casualty, right? Prevention is always better than a cure. So the first way you stop you deal with an injury is not get injured. And the best way to not get injured is to eliminate the threat, right? If you're a boxer, your best defense is to knock your opponent out, because then he's not going to be throwing any more punches, right? So you will get something called, and this is all well documented, and there's a strong heritage of this. as part of the training. So they will start doing training, right? Probably in Navarrete, which is in Western Ukraine, just northwest of Lviv. Massive training area, brilliant training area, actually. They will be doing, training there. They will start training people. Now, as part of that training, there's mentoring and there's operational mentoring. So you get your recruits. So you've got, I don't know, you don't really want any more than 8 because it becomes like when you're training tactics, it's quite intensive. You don't really want to have more than 8 guys for one instructor, but whatever. Say you've got 12 or whatever because operational requirements, and I totally get that. You train your guys, you teach them to use rifles, you teach them tactics, basic tactics, you teach them command roles, you teach them how to do an attack. The attack's broken down into 3 phases: the approach, the assault, and the fight through. You're going to attack a building differently than you're going to attack a vehicle, and you're going to attack that differently to then you're going to try to attack a bunker or a pillbox. All these things are different tactics that you need to learn over time, right? So once you've taught them the basics, right, and this is how wild it's going to be. You're going to teach them the basics and just send them off. That's how quickly it is. But to do that, you need some sort of, you need some, and the British military do this fantastic. You would need to go out with them, and I used to do this in Afghanistan. You need to go out there with them then as a mentor. So then you're on the ground with your guys, and you're there, but you're not. You're part of the team, but you're not right at the front line. And if you understand your way around a battlefield, that it's not that dangerous because you've got straight lines. If you stay behind the straight lines, you're normally okay. But that's where I think the mission creep is going to come. They're going to, and look, let's be clear. Keir Starmer has no idea what the military are doing. He's got no idea. John Healey doesn't know either. If he says, right, we're going to do training. Oh, okay, go and do training. Down that line, there will be operational mentoring in that training. And they will say, oh, we're doing training, that we're doing approved training. And it's all been approved, right? It's like, and one of the ways you get around this is terminology, right? Terminology. So if someone was to say to me, right, Sean, can you secure that area? I'd be, yep. And he'd say to me, right, don't put any snipers on the roof though. I'd say, right, okay. You don't put snipers on the roof. You put riflemen on the roof with scopes. And then guess what? For people to look in, that would look like they're snipers on the roofs, right? But they're not snipers because being a sniper is a specifically trained and badged thing. And if you've not done that course, you're not a sniper. So if you're on the roof with a rifle, with a scope, and you've not done that training, guess what? You're not a sniper on the roof. But for everybody else, it looks like you're a sniper on the roof. And then when people ask you, have you got snipers on the roof? You say, no, I haven't got snipers on the roof. I've got 2 guys with scopes on their rifles. What, do you want me to take them off? So it's ridiculous, right? So I hope that answered your question. Christian Defender is saying Putin doesn't want World War III. No, I agree. Nobody wants World War III. But what I think Putin wants is Ukraine, Poland, and Europe, all the way through. That's what I think Putin wants. And I don't think he wants. I don't think he wants World War III. Christian Defenders is saying maybe the Peaky Blinders should return. I've never watched an episode of Peaky Blinders, guys. Not one episode. Debbie Doobs is saying there's loads of adrenochrome at the min in these wars. I don't know what that means. Lewis Ackers is saying the Paris Agreement has already stated boots on the ground to be confirmed in the event of a peace deal. Yeah. Now, what? Let me get the map up. Actually, what? Yeah. But there's not going to be a peace deal, right? And any peace deal, the Russians have been quite clear. Any peace deal will not involve NATO boots on the ground. So maybe they're just going to be away. They're going to slim diggly it. I don't know. Right. Give me a second. What day are we on? The 22nd. Let me go back to the 22nd. Right. Okay, so we've got this map up. Well, wrong way. So this is the map of Ukraine, right? This is where our boys and girls are going to be going. Excuse me. So the red triangle, the red diamondy things, they are Russian military units. What are these? These clown faces. Somebody's wrote Orban's pro-Russian regime. What's that one? Pro-Russian clown Fico. That's funny. I actually know the guy who runs this, and he definitely does that. Right. So obviously you've got Ukraine here. Huge, beautiful country. That's better. You've got the area in red, which is occupied Ukrainian territory. So that's like maybe that's like 20% of the country, right? Has gone. You've got all this southern peninsula here, Crimea. That's all under Russian control now. You've got down from Kherson, Zaporizhia, all the way up through the Donetsk, and Now, this is what the ground looked like on the 21st of 22nd. So a month ago, right? So I'm just going to zoom around this area of Pokrovs because we was all talking about Pokrovs, right? Now, let me go out a bit. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fast forward this. So every time I click the cursor, it will show a day's advancements. And what I want you guys to note is the areas that are being taken by the Russians, right? So when the Russians move left on the screen or west, that's when they're taking ground. Now, I admit it's not much. It's not it's not drastic movement, but it's constant all over that front line. So for those of you guys, Pokrovs is there, right? Right in the middle. Ah! Нет, спасибо, чувак. And then it stops at 21. Now, it's these little movements, these little daily movements that are... It's these little daily movements that are the killer, right? It's not the big movements. It's not the drastic move. Can you guys remember when when they were saying Pokrovs is not going to fall? And we were doing analysis of Pokrovs and I was saying, look, the Russians have come from the north and they've come from the south. They're going to close it up in the pincer movement. And then guess what? Yeah, they came from the north and they came from the south, and Pokrovs is over. Pokrovs is over. Happened with Valyeka Novosilka down here somewhere. I don't know. Where's Valyeka Novosilka? Down there somewhere. Anyway, and there's like lots of there we are. Look, Valyeka Novosilka. The same thing. Russians came from the south, came from the north. And Volodya, same thing happened there. And I remember doing these on the live stream, saying, yep, the Russians are there. They're coming in from the north. They're coming in from the south. They've closed it up. They're doing this. And that's what's happening all over this front line. Literally, the Russians are in control, guys. The Russians are massively in control, and there's no stopping it, right? There is no stopping that push forwards. So if you was Vladimir Putin, you wouldn't come to a peace agreement, would you? If you're taking that ground daily and somebody says, hello, mate, do you want to come to a peace negotiation? You'd be like, well, I'm going to take your whole country, like, at some point. So, no, I'll just take the lot. Literally, that's what you would say. Imagine if you was like, imagine if you was playing poker, right? You're playing poker. You're sat there with all the chips. You're doing heads-up poker. There's just two of you. You're doing, there's only two of you left. You've got all the chips. The other guy's maybe got, I don't know, 6 big blinds left. He's probably got 6 big blinds left. And you know that if he keeps folding, then just eventually you're just going to take his chips away from him. And he says, tell you what, mate, shall we split the pot and call it a draw? You'd be like, no, I'm just gonna win. That's what I'm gonna do. Because you do that. If you're playing poker, right, and it's been an epic game, and you get to the end and there's 2 of you, it's quite acceptable for you to do. It's quite acceptable. What you guys can do is say, right, do you want to split the pot? And we'll have the next hand, and they'll be the winner, but we'll split the pot. And that's, that happens quite a lot when you're playing poker. Right, I'm just jumping down, guys, so I do apologize if I'm missing anyone's comments. Smoking cat food is saying no whites and no racism is the ultimate goal. Oh, right, okay. Ukraine is costing all the products. Oh, Christine Chambers is saying this war started in 2014. It absolutely did. It's about child trafficking and biolabs. I don't know, guys. Honestly, I don't know. I did medical assessments, right? I went around all the hospitals in Ukraine, right? And I had quite high authority. In fact, it didn't go any higher than my authority that I had. No, it didn't. Yeah, that's quite a flex, right? So I went round. I clearly did go higher than my authority. But I had pretty high authority in Ukraine, right? I was cleared by the by the intelligence services, and they, I had secret clearance, I guess. And I went around all the hospitals and all the medical facilities, and I had to go through all these lists, and there wasn't one place where anybody told me I wasn't allowed to go. So, I don't know, guys. If this is about child trafficking and biolabs, I don't think it is, guys. I don't think it is. I think this water's been murkied. I didn't see it, right? I did not see it. I don't know. I didn't see it, right? And I was in a position where I believe I would have seen it or smelt a suspicion, right? I'd have said, right, I'm going to this location, and then they would have said, oh, no, you can't go to that location. I had, maybe I just didn't see it. But I've heard this quite a lot. And I really want to talk to Andrew Bridgen about this because I've seen the list, right? I've seen the list of these people who are, who've been accused of child trafficking. And I've literally got 2 of, I know 2 of them, like on first name terms. I've been for beers with them, and I will stand by my judge of character on those 2 people. I don't know about the rest. And 2 of those people who have been accused, I will say they are good guys. They're solid guys. And, I don't think it's fair. So if I can debunk 2 of those guys, and that I can only debunk 2 of those guys, everybody else might be guilty of sin. They might be guilty of sin. I don't know, but I know these guys, and I would vouch for their, their credibility. So I don't know, guys. I really don't know. Hertzman West is saying Boris Johnson I think we all need to say, every time you say Boris Johnson now, I think everybody needs to say Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson should be immediately sent to the front lines in Ukraine, see how he likes it. Listen, guys, fairness to Boris, he's been right up there in the front line. He goes out to Kiev quite often, and I know the people who go with him there. Brad's on here again with his government's eating and earthly stuff. Hello, Brad Davis. Brad Davis loves his stuff. Brad, right? I've got your comment, mate. Let's let's calm it down a little bit. David King is saying, Sean, Russia say they will denazify Ukraine. Can you explain? Okay, so. Okay. Right. This is a very difficult topic because it gets people angry. All right. In the Second World War, the Ukrainians were treated very badly by the Russians, right? The Russians did not treat the Ukrainians well at all. Really bad things happened, right? When the Germans moved in, the Germans treat them a lot better, right? Now, history tells us that in the Second World War, the Russians were good. Trust me, guys, if you want to look into history books about the Russians in the Second World War, a lot of alleged atrocities, allegedly, reportedly, I'm not saying this, you guys can find this. A lot of the bad things that were happening were at the Russian hands, and the Germans just got blamed for it. And into such a context that at the end of the Second World War, Churchill wanted to bring the Germans into the fold and go and attack the Russians. That's well documented, right? Churchill wanted to go and attack the Russians after the end of the Second World War. It was called Operation Unthinkable. Let me just Google this for you guys real quick. Right, I'm gonna share this with you guys now. I'll just share this with you. So, and look, guys, I'm having to give you guys context to this because there's lots of nuance to this, right? And I want everybody to understand. Operation Unthinkable was a top secret 1945 plan, contingency plan ordered by Winston Churchill to launch a surprise attack against the Soviet Union on the 1st of July, 1945, aiming to force Stalin to honor democratic agreements in Eastern Europe. So it's well documented, right, that in the Second World War, the Russians were kind of bad. And the Germans got a lot of blame for that. Now, if you're Ukrainian, I've spoke to these people, guys, you know, really old people who were kids at the time. And I've spoke to them, and the Russians were very bad to the Ukrainians in the Second World War, really bad. And the Germans were really good to them. If the Russians, and look, guys, this is what I've been told firsthand, right? If the Russians wanted food from somewhere, they would go and take it, and they would, you know, they would robustly extract that food or whatever they wanted. And they would take whatever they wanted from women as well. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? When the Germans, you know, moved into Ukraine, it was a world apart. You know, if the Germans wanted something, they would go into like a shop and they would pay for it, and they would be very respectful to people. So when the Russians pushed back through Ukraine in the Second World War, a lot of the Ukrainians said, look, we are going to come with you guys. We're going to come with you guys because you guys are treating us better and we know what's coming if those Russians come. You've got to understand this whole history, guys. You've got to, like, and for that, they're being called, the word that they're called there. But, like, you've got to understand this whole, like, without understanding the whole history behind this, and then you ask why somebody does that, and like there's a steep, rich history here, guys. And by rich, I mean like it's deep. There's a deep history between these two countries. I hope I answered that question. Right, I'm going to jump to the bottom, guys. There's loads of comments, and I'm royal family are German, says Christine Chambers. Yeah, the British royal family are of German descent. Absolutely. They were called the what were they called? They were like the Weissers of something. Hang on, what was the royal family name? Yeah. So the British royal family, right? Okay. So the British royal family's name before coming the House of Windsor in 1917 was Saxe, Coburg, and Goth. The name was changed from this German title by King George V during World War I due to anti-German sentiment. Before Saxe and Gotha, the house, and I think this was from the House of Hanover. So yes, I agree. Absolutely all descended from the Germans. Absolutely. Yeah, you're 100% right. All come from the Germans. Christian the Defender is saying, I sat with Boris Johnson at the 2012 100-meter final, London Olympics. Boris is an evil. He's saying he's an evil man. That I don't know if I'm allowed to use that word on this channel. Yeah, Saxe, Coburg, Gotha. So does that sound British to you guys? It doesn't, does it? The royal family are of German descent. Michael K is saying 15 to 19 million Russian civilian casualties during the German occupation of World War II. That's absolute. That statistic's wrong, Michael. That statistic is absolutely wrong, mate. That is that statistic's wrong. Totally wrong. That statistic's totally wrong. Sean Pearsons is saying all European royalty were related, even the Tsar of Russia. Look into London 2012 ritual to COVID. What? COVID wasn't until... What does that mean? Right, what does this mean? Right. Right. I'm just reading this now, guys. I'm literally just going to give this a second. False claims. I understand it's, I understand it. There's a paywall. Right. Okay. Let me get back off that. Right. So Associated Press. Photos of London Olympics don't show prior knowledge of pandemic. Claim. Photos of the London Olympics opening ceremony in 2012 prove that the COVID-19 pandemic has been planned for a long time. Right, where are the pictures? I'm gonna have to look into that, guys. I don't know what that means. I've not seen that, and I've not even considered that. Right, listen, ladies and gentlemen, the clock is ticking. The clock is ticking, and it's going down. The clock's ticking, and it's going down, ladies and gentlemen. The crux of this live stream, and don't worry, I'm going to be back on later. The crux of this live stream has been the British Defence Secretary has said that he wants to have British boots on the ground in Ukraine this year, i.e. 2026. He said he wants to be the first British Defence Minister to put boots on the ground in Ukraine. That's what he's saying, not me. This is all inevitably going to lead to civil unrest, civil disorder, maybe even... It's not going to be anything as clean as a civil war. You know, a civil war would be this side wants to achieve these goals. This side does not want to achieve these goals. They have a war. The winner decides who's right. That is not what's coming to the United Kingdom, guys. That is absolutely not what's coming to the United Kingdom. It's coming. It's going to be a lot worse, right? And all the things that are happening right now, the war in Iran, when those missile strikes go in, guys, in fact, you know what? There's not even a war in Iran right now, is there? The potential war in Iran that's probably going to happen end of this month or after the 3rd of March. When that happens, that raises the likelihood of sleeper cells activated in the United Kingdom. And we know that they're already operating here. Also, when British boots do get deployed to Ukraine, who's going to come and help the police? Like, if we see riots again, or an order of magnitude more intense, or I said, when I give this analysis, guys, about public order, I've done a lot of public order training in the military. I've been there with the shield. I've been there with the big shield. I've been there with the little shield. I've been there as a baton gunner. I've been there as a commander, as a team leader. I've been there in the crowd in civilian clothes trying to make covert arrests. I've been in a van with a camera trying to identify the ringleaders to then make, those covert arrests. I've done all those jobs, right? So when I give my analysis of public order and police failing, what I said in 24 still stands. If there had have been 10% more capacity, as in 10% more people or 10% more ferocity from the crowds, the police would have failed. Now, once the police fail in one area, I don't know if this is... I'm assuming they've got something like this. They've got a code word that they give. If the police fail in one area, and that, for example, let's just say those hotels in Rotherham, right? You guys have no idea how close those hotels were to going up in Rotherham. Honestly, guys, it was going to be fucking carnage. That would have been a lot. It would have been really bad. If one hotel goes, news of it spreads, and that energy spreads, and very quickly those people then they've got a feel for it. They know they can do it. They turn up at the next hotel then, and then they do it. And before you know it, guys, all fucking hell's broken loose. All hell's broken loose. And that's how quickly these things happen. Right, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to close this down now. I'm going to be back on later. I'm going to give you guys a UAP update. But listen, isn't the weather getting nice? The weather's starting to get nice. Anyway, guys, I'll close you guys down now. If you've not done so already, please hit those buttons below. The like, comment, subscribe, bell notification. Really helps me out when you do that, guys. And I will see you guys later for a UAP update. And this afternoon, guys, we're going to get extra wild.